What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. My guest tonight is Danny Leach. Danny runs a website, danny.cdyn.com, which collects and archives bingo history and stories from all across the country and all across the world. Hi, Danny. It's Nick. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Danny, I know you only digitally from your website, which is danny.cdyn.com, and there you've archived a massive amount of bingo history, stories, and information. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got started doing that?
Yeah. Well, first I'd like to pay a little tribute to my website, the CDYN. Most people are familiar with Phil Hooper, and he has just a wonderful technical website. And one of Phil's hobbies is the internet, right? I mean, he does it for a living. He even says that on his site. Mm-hmm. And so he's running some server systems, and some people that he has been kind to, including myself, he's given a home, and so my website doesn't have some fancy title or anything. He's pretty straightforward. I think he's pretty technical, and most of his websites are Raymond, Danny. I mean, they all start out with the first name thing, and what's really nice about that, in addition, just to his, his being so graceful, is he's given us pretty much unlimited access. So if you were to look at my website right now, my website is about 10 times bigger than his. And what's really unique about that is his website is full of video, full of high-resolution graphics. So he was very, very kind to not only give me a home, but also give me quite a bit of a web space. Now, one of the kind of neat things for my particular case, well, at least I think it's neat, is I started on the internet way back when the internet was when it's just in its infancy, right? And there was literally thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of sites, but there was very few sites that paid tribute to bingo pinballs. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was only two. There was Phil Hooper's website, and let me compliment Phil again. I call Phil the Bingo King, mm-hmm. And I really like that. And then there was another website by a man named Raymond Watts. And Raymond's site is really, really cool. It's not bingo specific, but he really touches on some really neat bingo things. He hits the silver cells. He hits a few of the manuals, mm-hmm. and he touches on some things from his area of the country. Raymond is down from Texas. He's down in the Galveston area, one of the islands down there. And when he grew up, he's a little bit more elderly than I am, and so he had a unique touch on the bingos. It was this machine, that machine, this website, that website, this arcade, that arcade. So, so I kind of looked around. And I was going, well, Phil, not only does he just have a wonderful technical website, but he's also very gracious, and if you just email him, he'll help you with any problem you have. And then, Raymond, on the other hand, was, okay, I'm into these games, I'm into this history, I'm into this part of the country. And so I was thinking, well, Danny, you kind of got an affinity for these things. You kind of want to be part of this. So how could you fit in? Where would you, fill in this blank, fill in that, fill in this blank? And that's kind of evolved over the years, too. Now if you look at the internet, there's some really, really great bingo pinball websites out there. And they have their own specialties. They're into rebuilding the machines. They're into selling the machines. They're into the United States machines, the European machines, on and on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, okay, Danny, you have researched these for a million really cool reasons, and you have some wonderful history that you've gleaned and maintained. So why don't you go ahead and share that with others? And I'm going to call you Nicholas if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Nicholas, where I was running with this whole thing was, okay, I want to build interest in this hobby and this technology and this fun and these arcade games. And maybe if I hit enough spots and touch enough areas, that I can gather a little following, and maybe that little following would lead me to more resources and more opportunities and more things to share. Mm-hmm. So you'll see in my bingo websites have graduated over the years. They've touched this, they've touched that, they've migrated here, they've gone there. They're basically all over the map, and that was kind of my plan, Danny. What can you provide and maintain, and also share with others? And that was kind of neat too, Nick. As I moved along, the internet has changed so much in this last 20-year period, this last 30-year period, where a lot of the bingo history has been posted momentarily. Mm-hmm. That website's up for a week, or that website's up for 2 weeks, and so I wanted to also capture those things. And say, okay, I don't want to lose this history. I've got a permanent home right now. Phil's gracious enough to let me be on his website. I've got quite a few things to share. And some people might find it of interest. Some people might not, and that's cool. But if I sparked enough interest out there, and if I shared enough history out there, then just maybe I could help keep the longevity of the games going. Maybe I could help promote these games into the future and help save some of this technology. This is some of the most wonderful technology America has ever invented. It's touched so many lives. Back before there was video games, back before there was pinballs, the flipper pinballs in the bars, there were these games, and there's a million people that have this little piece of history, that little piece of knowledge, that little piece of fun, something to share, something to remember. And so I tried to encompass all that, and I've tried to share that and maybe find a home for myself and my website.
Gotcha. Okay. And so when did you start doing the website?
Well, if you look on the top of my website, right under my main picture, I post one picture weekly whenever I change the website. Mm-hmm. I boast that I posted this in September of 2001. But, I think it goes back a little farther than that. But I was kind of going through some hard times back then. I didn't have a solid internet connection. I didn't have a solid, residence. My life was in turmoil a little bit. But I think this thing actually went back to 1996 when I started touching the games. I was 1 or 2 years after Phil.
Okay. And what is the first game that you remember playing?
Oh, that's an easy one, big time. I love that. I love that machine. When I was in high school, and I date way back. I've got a little gray hair. I was in high school in 1976 up here in Portland, Oregon. For those who are interested, and there was a lot of wheeling and dealing going on up here. The barter system was quite in effect up here. And my sister lived with a man who was involved in a barter system, and he had all kinds of things coming in and out of his life. And he had one of these big time machines, and it was dead. It didn't work. You could plug it in, you could kick it, you could hit it with your car, you could drop it off the back of your truck, and that thing was just dead in the water. And I'm sitting there, I'm fascinated. I'm a young 16-year-old kid, right? And mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there going, hey, buddy, let me play this. And he looked at me like, hey, you're a young 16-year-old kid. Shut your mouth and stay away from my machine. Well, anyway, so one weekend they took off to the Oregon coast, and they said, hey, Danny, do you mind washing the place? And I'm, cha-ching, bingo. I'm all on this, right?
Uh-huh.
So I said, oh yeah, no problem. I'll be right over, and they weren't even out of the driveway. I had that thing pulled away from the wall. And I'm sitting there going, oh, man, let's plug this thing in. Let's hit a few of these buttons on the handrail and on the front. Mm-hmm. And nothing would work. So I went ahead and popped open the back door. And I didn't know anything about electronics back then. I was a young person and stuff. But I did know you didn't touch AC current. It'd kill you. Mm-hmm. But back in 1976, that everybody had not everybody, but the kids I grew up with, y'all had these plastic combs in your back pocket. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, plastic doesn't collect electricity. I even know that. And man, I took that comb and I started running it down the relay bank, and I started running it up and down the scoreboard, and I started touching everything I could touch. And man, this big time lit up like a Christmas tree. Bing, bang, boom, 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 boom. And it started making all that clicking noise, and you could just smell that ozone in the air. It was just fabulous. And all of a sudden a ball popped out. Awesome. And I'm going, oh yeah, I'm in like Flint. I played that game for the next 48 hours straight, and I got caught. My sister and her boyfriend came back in the parking lot. They came in the house, and I'm sitting there. I got this machine out in the middle of his living room, and he's just looking at me, and he finally just smiled and he says, okay, I guess it's yours. And he finally gave me that machine, man.
Wow.
And those were old school games. I mean, the big time goes back to the supercard games, mm-hmm. and very few features. That's when they first had rollovers. That's when they first had this, and that's when they first had that. And and just some trivia for your folks is a lot of people visit my website, and a lot of people think I'm some sort of crazy expert on these games. I don't know a damn thing about these games, Nick, but I do tell you, I've owned 5 of these games. I've owned Big Time, I've owned Hi-Fi, I've owned Palm Springs, I've owned Mexico, and I've owned one more in there, and I won't even tell you what it is because I still don't have it working. After all these years, it's sitting here waiting for me to figure out what's wrong with it. And excuse me, I've owned one more Surf Club. But I'm old school. I like the early games, so they're just straightforward and they're a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Hi-Fi, I've never played that one. That one's got the bump feature.
It's not only got the bump feature, buddy, but it's the only one with the bump feature,
right?
And the whole playfield jumps.
Oh.
And I'll tell you, man, these games, I don't know if you played in the early ones, but they're quite noisy, and they're they're very loud. And when you hit a button on them, man, it's making noise, and noise is flowing out of this thing, and ozone is flowing out of this thing, and smoke are flowing out of these things. I mean, and half these machines are so old they smell like they've been in the bars. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you. When you finally hit that Hi-Fi and you finally hit that bump table feature, that whole machine jumps. It literally jumps off the floor an inch.
Really?
And then every ball in the table shifts, and you're sitting there going, "Oh, all right, this is hip. This is a brand new game. Awesome. It's one of my favorite machines to play."
So it actually shakes all the balls that are trapped out?
No. The entire playfield, all 25 holes, mm-hmm. top to bottom, it flips. It's got springs on this end, springs on that end, and bam, the whole thing shakes, and those balls just go wherever the heck they want to. It's the craziest thing you ever seen. It's just like, it'd be like if you wanted to tilt the machine and shake it and shake and rattle and roll. Mm-hmm. That's Hi-Fi, and it's a wonderful game.
That sounds cool. Yeah, reading the description, of course, is very different from talking to somebody who's played it. So I'd never realized. I thought it just kind of self-nudged a little bit. I didn't realize it actually bounced the whole thing. That's cool. So, you like the older machines. When did you start you said you were 16 when you got your first machine? Huh.
Yeah, if you were to talk to somebody familiar with this area, they would tell you we live in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much encompasses Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And Washington was pretty lean and pretty tolerant of the machines. I mean, even now, if you look on the internet, when you see machines from the West Coast, and you see experts from the West Coast, you know, Don Gerlis and the guys that are fixing these machines, they're all from Seattle. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool. You know, the games seem to survive up there really well, but in Idaho, I don't really think there are that many games to begin with. I think there are more games out, you know, just to the east of that in Montana and stuff like that. But in Oregon, you know, the Oregon laws back then, and you can read a ton of pages on my website, the Oregon laws just seemed to crack down on these. And they were pretty ubiquitous. I mean, they were everywhere. I mean, they were in the VFWs. They were in the taverns. I mean, they were, you know, anywhere you could think about playing one of these games, they were pretty much there. But I'll tell you, they're now, after everything that went down in that, you know, 60s and 70s and late 50s, they're pretty much gone. They're hard to find machines up here. So one of the things I've noticed, not only are they very sparse and very rare, but the few games you do find are the older games. They're you know, they're the early 50 games and stuff like that. So, you know, I think part of my interest was, okay, you know, hey, these are a little more simple than the, you know, Magic Screen, Magic Lines. You know, they're for me, they're somewhat complex. But, you know, hey, they were here, they were available, and, you know, it's what we had. So, you know, it's nostalgia, it's Americana, it's kind of what you grew up with and stuff like that. So, you kind of, you know, it's kind of what you know, it's kind of what you do and stuff like that. And that was kind of cool. But, you know, I'll tell you, you know, some of them light up real pretty. I mean, if you just look at Palm Springs, for example, you know, you know, and up here in Oregon, we get a lot of rain, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, half the year the weather just sucks. But if you look at a little Palm Springs machine, you know, it's got, you know, 6 or 7, 8 babies there in bikinis, and they're standing in palm trees. You know, there's blue sky, and there's all kinds of things flying on this machine, and the play field itself has just got some just gorgeous girls you don't find on the modern day pinballs. So, you know, I think the young man, you know, a little taboo, playing, you know, doing something a little naughty, a little out of the ordinary, you know, I think it was easy to migrate to those and find an affinity for those. And, you know, so you kind of get comfortable with them. And another really kind of thing that, you know, kind of strikes me over the years, you know, is I've been a bachelor on and off for, you know, 30 some odd years now. But if you got a couple of these sitting in your living room and people are going by and stopping, people stop by when they see 3 or 4 of these in your living room. People stop by and knock on your door and introduce themselves. And the kind of neat thing about these games too is they were pretty simple to explain. Hey, okay, there's one bingo card. You know, there's 2 super cards. You know, there's a pick a number. There's a dancing odds. You throw a few nickels in this thing, and man, I'll tell you, people just kind of get the bug. You know, you're pretty soon you got neighbors and friends you never met before, and they're stopping by all the dang time. You know, which I think it's really cool too. You know. Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. You know, I started with the Magic Screen games, and my experience was that they were, you know, really complex. And that kind of turned me off at first. So I wonder if things would have been different if I started with, you know, some of the wood rail games. So
well, one thing that happened to me a long time ago, before I hooked up with Phil and before I had my web pages on Phil's site, I posted a couple pages out on the internet. I didn't know anything about internet code, the HTML, and I didn't know where to post your your website, and I didn't know how to use meta files to find somebody, and I didn't know any of that stuff. I was truly a novice at this whole thing. I was a novice at the pinballs, a novice at the technology. I was just trying to get a foot out there and kind of open the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next thing I know, a couple weeks later, a guy named Jeffrey Lawton is writing me,
mm-hmm.
going, Danny, hey, that picture you posted is really not that, it's really this. And the next thing I know, Dick Buchel is writing me, and he's going, Danny, you don't have any idea what the hell you're talking about. You need to get a hold of Russ Jensen. and the next thing I know, Russ Jensen is writing me saying, hey, Danny, check this out. And I'm going to send you a few things. I mean, I'm going to help you out on all this stuff. And it was kind of cool where you're kind of going through this evolution, and you're kind of getting a feel for these things, and you're sitting there going, okay, there's a progression going on, and I didn't really realize that at first. It wasn't something that just was stark in my mind and that just obviously stood out. And I'm kind of intuitive, I think I'm kind of smart. I know when to stop at the red lights and stuff, But one day, Russ Jensen. He said, Danny, I sent you something. I just wanted to make sure you got it. And so I'm looking at the mail, and all of a sudden I get this CD-ROM thing, this computer disc thing. Mm-hmm. And it's an interview of him and Dick Buchel and a couple other guys that I still don't recognize their name. And it's an interview with Don Hooker. Mm-hmm. And Dick Buchel, he was old school. He liked the old pinballs. He liked the old slot machines. He liked the old, but they had these things called advertisement games where they wanted to sell their product, and that's not the name of them, by the way. If they wanted to sell their product in a bar, they'd sell these promotion machines. But anyway, Dick Buchel was really into the old games. And Russ was kind of into the pinballs, and he knew what was kind of going on. But the third person in this interview, and I never really did understand his name, I said, hey, buddy, you're familiar with the bingos. Why don't you go ahead and take over this interview with Don? And so he started, he's like me, I've heard the wind blow before. He can rattle his gums all night long. But one of the things he said that really stood out to me is he said, Don, when you develop most of these games for Bally, well, Don, it looks like you took the player through a journey. You started out with a few features, a few options, a few advancing odds, and then the next game you produced, well, you added something, an attraction. And then the next game you added an attraction, and the next game you added maybe 3 or 4 things, or maybe you added a different set of mechanics, and he likened it to the word evolution, a growth, and I always thought that was so cool that. Okay, if that was really true, and Don Hooker never admitted that in this whole conversation, but it was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and invent this set of machines, and we have a market for them, and we're going to go ahead and make them as attractive as possible, and we're going to go ahead and share this experience with the player, and more importantly, we're going to involve the player. And I thought that was so very cool. That okay, you might play one of these games, but no, that is it. You've only played one of these games. There's 60, 70 of these machines. Now there's a few hundred of them. Mm-hmm. Where okay, here's how it started. Here's how it evolved. Here's the path we took. Here's the road we traveled down. Here's the journey we took together. And man, I always thought that was so, so cool. So back to your kind of query for me, and I don't remember your exact words, but I hope this answers your question. So, part of the reason I like the old games versus, I started out with a, magic screen or something like that, is it was the old times. It was the early evolution of these games. It was the forefathers. It was the ancestors. This is where these games started. And they weren't very complex. They were very simple. But someday, if you ever want to talk in another interview, just I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, I'll tell you a little bit about Third, Fourth, Second, and Fifth Street. And it's a very, very interesting progression on just how the odds were built on these machines and just how the future were built on these machines, and the features and the offerings and the incentives. It all plays a huge part in, we're going to build a customer base, and we're going to hold their attention forever, and we're never going to let go. And if you think about that, I'm going to use a bad language here. That's a fucking amazing statement, amazing philosophy. We're going to own you for the next 40, 50 years, and maybe even beyond that. These things came out in, 1951? Mm-hmm. Well, what year is it? And they still got the attention of me, of you, and 1,000 followers. If you look, you got to look at Raymond Watts' website. He's got a little counter on there. Mm-hmm. It's up in the millions, and it's not a repeat counter. It's not like I go out there right now, and I go out there right now, and I go out there right now, and that's 3. No, he's got 1 million followers because the interest in these things is so fantastic, and it's so phenomenal. Once you find somebody that likes these things, man, you have a pinball friend, and you have a guy that might stick with them. There's a gentleman out I'll call it out west, out in the Midwest. His name is he calls himself, his handle is Old Binger. Mm-hmm. And hey, that means he's been into it for a real long time. And I find that very fascinating. I find that very cool. And when I kind of look at the internet too, when I kind of look at this whole phenomenon, this bingo pinball thing, we might not have the largest following, not by any means, but we do have a dedicated following, and we do have some people that are really, really into this game. And I like that name, Binger. And another phrase I like even better is, hey, and I say this in a few of my websites, hey, this is why this guy is one of my bingo heroes. Mm-hmm. Because he truly loves the game. He has a passion, he has an affinity, he has that presence of mind. This is something that not only holds his interest, but has held it for a real long time.
Were you aware of, outside of submissions to your site, of the Ohio Dime games?
No, I've never played an Ohio Dime game, but I have 2. Well, I have a library of pinball books, and 2 of them are from Mr. Jeffrey Lawton, Dr. Mm-hmm. Bingo. Yep. In his first book, he references the Ohio Dime games quite a bit. And one of the things I find fascinating about them, well, actually several things, is I think they fall in a niche somewhere between the true intent of the bingos and the true designers that design most of the more fascinating, more complex bingos. I don't think Don Hooker designed any of those games. I don't think Bernie designed any of those games. But I think they were designed for a market for a couple reasons. And I think they were designed for a market to transport parts across interstate lines. I think they were designed in a time in America's history where America had a little more dollars in their pocket. They were a little more affluent. Things were moving forward. The arcades were opening up. Instead of just men going to bars and men going to taverns and men doing this and men doing that, I think families were going to bowling alleys. And I think those games started popping up everywhere. And I have a friend, and you'll see him mentioned several times in my website, Mr. Keith Niccolo. He's just a fabulous, wonderful bingo expert, and he's from the Ohio Valley, and that's where those games kind of originated. And another thing I really like about those games is the unknown mystery behind them, is where they had so many different names, so many different handles, that they were kind of cloaked in a little bit of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Bally brochures, their sales flyers, well, the play fields don't line up with the back glasses. The back glasses don't line up with the buttons on the front door. The buttons on the front door don't line up with anything you see today. There's this whole little hidden episode of history right there. And it's really another thing I've really been looking at closely, and I haven't quite solved it, and I apologize to everybody who follows my site, is I think some of those things are out of sequence, too, where you look at the 59, 60, 61, 62, 64. I think they go out to 65 and 66, but I can't prove that. I think there's some sort of convoluted, I hate to say that, difficult history there to really unravel. But what I really, really like about them is, if you could go back to Bright Lights. I mean, you could go all the way back to Bally's first games, and where the six card grandfather came from. But when I think you look at Ohio games, I think you're looking at the entire future of Europe and everything they designed. I think it came out of that era, and that's another one of those little mysteries. I have a little notebook sitting here next to my computer. Hey, Danny, check this, prove that, do this, do that. And that's one of those things I want to understand, because I think it's a hidden piece of history that doesn't have a lot of detail, that if we did know that detail, I think we'd know a lot more about the history of the games, the history about America, a history about Europe, and history about these vendors. I think it's a wonderful period in these times. But I'd have to refer to the doctor. I think the doctor knows more than anybody.
Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned that you have a Mexico, which is a United, and that stands out from what you were telling me, and that it's the only United. What do you think about United bingos versus Bally's?
Oh, dude. Man, I'll tell you right now, this Mexican game is just rocks. It has everything. Now, one of the things I haven't read all your emails and all your postings, and I apologize for that, Nick. You'll find my involvement in these games has a little bit of delay. I'm not always the sharpest tool, and I'm always right on the money. But one of the things that you say that you want someday is one of those rotation games from United.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the cool things about the early games, and one of the cool things about United Mexico, Bally versus Mexico, those are the only games played in this, 52 through 56, right through there, is what I really kind of like about the Mexico game is it has the Bally Supercard feature, but the feature it has that Bally never had was the special card feature. And that, because your bingo card is a 5x5 card, right? And on most of those early games, you just have one main bingo card, right. And then your super cards were like a 3x3 card, and they, and sometimes they were just curb numbers, and I'll explain that to you someday if you ever want to have another interview, but some of the when they started putting rollovers in the game, where you hit the rollover and you light up number 10 or number 25 or something like that. Usually those were the center card number. But the special cards were the four number cards. And man, they were some tough numbers. If you looked at that play field, they were, and you were to draw an X across there, let's say from, Alaska to Florida to Maine to California, you'd see that they were those numbers, very, very tough numbers. But they also did that special thing. Now, on the United machines were like the early, my early big time machine. My early big time machine, to light up that super card and to get all the super card features, like 3 numbers pay 4 numbers, or 4 corners or something like that. You just couldn't light up the super card with 1 nickel. No, you had to put in 4 or 5 nickels, and you'd see these little arrows under the super card. It would slowly build up these odds, and pretty soon that super card was lit up with every feature it could get. That on the United games, the special cards, when you lit up a special card, it was lit. It was done. There was 4 numbers, and you had every feature on the planet. And that was really, really, really cool too. And kind of what I liked about the United Mexico pinballs too, is back then, I'm a young man. I mean, I'm daydreaming. I'm doing all this crap. They had senoritas. They had, they were going, if you look at some of their games, they were going to Tahiti. They were going here, they were going there, they were going here. And so I don't know if I've answered your question, but, I kind of like that they were just, at least in my mind, they were just a little more exotic and had just a little bit different features where you could do it. And now, even going back, and this is one of the things that I loved about the United games, even going back to the earliest United games, they had light a name. Where if you light up, and Mexico's a good example, that's 6 letters, and that's a lot, but if you light up that M and that E and that X and that I and that O, and those are all features on the board, part of that rollover scheme, it's pretty soon this thing will just light up like a Christmas tree. And what was really cool about it is you only get 5 balls, right? So you only get 5 balls, and you're trying to light up 6 letters in Mexico. No, these games are smart. Excuse me for my language, the damn Bally games, when you dump them, you dump every feature, you dump every odd, you would dump where you were. You'd literally start over and had to put in nickels. The United games, they would remember where you were at. If you had MEX lit up, hey man, boom, and you finished 5 balls and you cleared and you got 3 in a row. It didn't matter what happened. It would, next time you put a nickel in there, boom, you had 3 of those letters lit up.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So that was the ultimate incentive. If you want to play a United game, just play it 3 or 4 times in a row, and only play a nickel. Play a nickel and get an M. Play 2 nickels and get an E. So instead of putting 50 coins in a Bally game to light up that OK feature, no, you'd put 7 coins in a Mexico game. Pretty soon you'd have Mexico lit up, and this card would light up like a freaking Christmas tree, and you'd be there. You'd be on, man. You would have everything you ever wanted, and it was kind of cool too. Just trivia for you, and somebody's going to correct me on this because I might be wrong. Is United, the United pinballs had the first on the coin door. They had the first select a feature knob. So you could go in there sometimes and say, okay, hey, Mexico's lit up. I want to select a feature. I've got all kinds of features I can select. I can select an extra ball. I can select 4 and line scores 5. I can select a push-in button and get a super selection. I can select both super cards. I can select both special cards. All I got to do is turn that knob wherever I want to, toss in another coin, maybe build up my odds, hit that thing, and bam, I'm lighting this thing up like a Christmas tree. And that was pretty cool too. Now, if you go back to the Don Hooker interview, the first thing that Don talks about in his interview is, hey, before you could even design these machines, you had to understand the odds. You just didn't want this thing to pay out coin after coin after coin after coin. You weren't building a losing machine. You were building a machine that paid out 60, 65, 70% because the owner-operator, the mafia, wanted to get the rest of those nickels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said, he made just a quick reference in there, a quick comment in there, and he says, I don't think United ever did that. I think the United machines were wide open, and from what I can tell, the United machines were wide open. If you stuffed enough coins in there, and you hit enough features, and hit the right coin, and you hit the right slot, buddy, you were rolling in the money, and there was no, hey, we're going to pay you 25 guaranteed. No, we might pay you 100, and we might pay you more than that. Because nobody really knows what this fucking machine is doing.
So, were those United machines less popular en route? I mean, were they less popular?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm skipping around here. My mind's wandering. But earlier you referenced, Danny. Well, you mentioned you only had a few machines, and you had a United machine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I was trying to tell you back with the Oregon laws and the restrictions, they pretty much raped, purged would be a better characterization. They took the machines offline, as many as they could. I mean, these things are almost incredibly difficult to find. So the ones you do find there are in Grandpa's garage, or you might find, some in an old VFW, or you might find this, or you might find that, and so that the really cool thing about the Mexico I have,
mm-hmm.
I paid $25 for it a year ago.
Wow.
And dude, and I'm going to tell you that the man I bought it on eBay, and I hate eBay, by the way. The man I went out and bought it from on eBay, he had a basement full of 27 machines, not pinballs, 27 pinballs, not bingos. He had 27. He had 27 pinballs. He had 12 bingos. 7 of them were United. And he said, Danny, I've been posting these on eBay for all summer, and nobody wants to buy them. So I thought I'd throw one out here for $25 and see where it went. And then he started. Then he started showing me that, hey, Danny, I redid the back glass on this one, and I rebuilt this one, and I redid this one, and I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that. And he was just like some pinball guru, man. And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, I couldn't have bought a better machine. As far as mechanics go, I mean, it was in beautiful condition. The back glass is perfect. The play field is perfect. The wood rails and the cabinet paint job just totally suck. I mean, it looks like it's 50 years old, and I kind of like that. Mm-hmm. But it kind of matched the old school games I liked, and it kind of matched the games that I've been finding out here for 20 years. So I'm a victim of circumstance, happenstance, if you will. Hey, these are the machines that I've been able to find. These are the machines that fit my pocketbook. These are the machines I kind of like. These are the machines that are available, and I'm going to go ahead and buy a few of them here and there, and and hopefully my wife won't divorce me. So that's kind of my evolution. I haven't been a fanatic, but I've been a dedicated player, a dedicated wanderer, somebody that's been interested in the history, somebody that just kind of wanted to share a little bit with what I've learned, with what I've had, that hopefully will, when people visit that website, hopefully it'll spark a little bit of interest in these games, and maybe we'll build a next generation. I don't know if you've met Vic Camp.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a wonderful man, a wonderful player, and he's a pinball aficionado and a bingo guy. And if you follow him, he's out on the Google, and they have groups out there. One of the groups is rec.games.pinball, and under there's a few people posting pinball ads. And about 6-7 years ago, he posted this pinball ad, and he just said, "Hey, I'm hoping to gain, I'm hoping to influence, to generate some new interest in these games, so this history isn't lost." And so Vic and I have shared a lot. Obviously, we shared hundreds of emails, and I think he's a really Superman. He's really been a big help for my website. And in fact, many of the things on my website are from his knowledge, expertise, and history. But I'm hoping that I can be part of that. It kind of sparks another interest in me. So. But I'll tell you, man, ever since Vic said that, I've been reaching out to everybody I can to kind of be part of this community. And so one day I saw what you're doing, and I said, "Hey, okay, Nicholas has started a really wonderful website. He's doing some really neat things. So I'm going to write him, and I'm going to say, 'Hey, buddy, is there anything I can do to help support you?' And not just because you're into these games, but because you're help promoting a wonderful piece of American history, and I want to thank you."
Well, thank you for everything that you've done. I mean, Steve Smith, I don't know if you've heard, but he's the one who got me into these games. And
yeah, I know Steve. He owes me $40, Steve, for listening. You son of a bitch. Anyway. All right.
But he got me into them, and he pointed me to your site, and I started reading and didn't stop. So I've constantly I'm going back and rereading these stories and picking out new tidbits every once in a while. Oh, I didn't remember that. So I really appreciate what you've done, and thank you.
Thank you. And so, Nicholas, you have my phone number. If you ever want to chat again, just give me a call, buddy.
Will do. Thanks very much, Danny.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Talk to you soon. I want to thank my guest, Danny Leach, and you can find Danny's website over at danny.cdyn.com. And thank you for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at nbaldridge, and you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.